صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Assalamu alaikum. So inshallah we're on chapter 14 on the topic of Shamail. So if you want to put the date and today's title, the Messenger of Allah's manner of eating and his bread. So first in Ka'b ibn Malik related the Prophet ﷺ used to lick his fingers clean thrice after eating. And he also said the Messenger of Allah ﷺ would use his 3 fingers to eat with and would lick them or clean them after eating. So here it's mentioning about the type of food that they used to eat at that time was very dry and it was very simple. Maybe some bread with dipping into olive oil or vinegar or even some kind of curry or something like that. So the habit of the person was to use 3 fingers. Usually these 3 fingers, the index finger, thumb and the middle finger. So they would break the bread or whatever it was eating and dip it into the sauce and eat it with the 3 fingers. As for licking the fingers, there's still no way of licking. It's not putting your fingers, the whole finger into your mouth. The way that our teachers have shown that the Prophet would lick his finger is any leftover food that was still remaining on the finger, he would place it between his lips and just sort of eat like a lick like that. So just between his lips, anything that was left like that. That's how we do it. So not necessarily to put the finger in your mouth, because that doesn't look very nice and also make sound and it looks in actual fact is any food sort of remaining on his fingers, they would just place it sort of between his upper and lower lips and then lick it like that. The next from Anas ibn Malik, who said the Messenger of Allah was offered some dates and I saw him eat whilst leaning against something due to hunger. Says Aisha said the family of Muhammad never had their fill of barley bread for 2 consecutive days until the Messenger of Allah passed away. So here he's talking about Prophet he was one thing to remember that Prophet was out of choice, that he did not store up food or anything like that. Whatever food that he would, he always gave it away to the poor and needy. So he never sort of kept anything in his house out of for like planning for the future. He would always give it away to the poor and needy. Anybody who came, he would always give it away. Somebody would, like for instance, he would get meat or bread or whatever it was, and then somebody would come knocking on the door or something like that. He would always. So that's what he's talking about. So that's one thing to remember, that Prophet ﷺ, he wasn't poor because that's the state he found himself. No, Prophet ﷺ chose to live that simple life. He was offered the whole world and everything in it if he wanted to, but Prophet ﷺ, out of choice, he decided to live like a simple person with nothing excess amount or anything like that. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is that Prophet he was leaning against something. Prophet he did not have food for a long time, so he was very hungry, and that's why. And in those days, so the thing to remember as well, the food what they ate in those days is not the food what we eat nowadays. Our teachers mentioned that this food or meal maybe consisted of a few dates, maybe a piece of bread with some olive oil or some vinegar or some kind of sauce or something like that. And they also had like maybe a few pieces of meat or something like that, and they would share the food as well. So that's the type of food that they would consume, and maybe they would have a meal once or twice a day. That was the type of food they had, whereas our food consists of so much is unbelievable. The next one from Abu Umama, who said there would be no leftover barley bread from the Messenger of Allah's household. Ibn Abbas said the Messenger of Allah and his family would spend consecutive nights with empty stomachs, not finding any supper, and their bread was predominantly barley bread. Sahal ibn Sa'ad was asked, did the Messenger of Allah eat refined flour? To which Sahal replied, the Messenger of Allah never saw refined flour, and he met Allah Almighty and Majestic. Sahal the companion was asked, did you have sieves during the lifetime of Messenger of Allah? He replied, the Sahal, we did not have sieves. he was then asked, so what did you use to do with the barley? And he replied, we used to blow on it so that whatever was on it would fly off, and then we would knead it into dough. So here it's mentioning the type of bread that they would have. It was made of barley bread. It was very coarse or very hard, you could say. It wasn't refined the way we have bread nowadays, which is very soft and doesn't have any bits and things like that. So the type of bread what they had at that time, it was very hard as well. And it gives you a bit of description. They would be using barley. And the next one from Anas ibn Malik, who said, the Prophet of Allah ﷺ never ate on a table, nor from a small appetizer plate, nor did he have refined bread. Yunus, one of the narrators, said, so I asked Qatada, then what did they eat on? He replied, on these leather mats, sufra. So here he's talking about that Prophet ﷺ, he never actually ate sitting on a chair and on table, nor did he eat like from a refined bread like white flour or anything like that. And he used to eat, and then he mentioned that he used to eat on the floor, sitting on a mat, on a sufra. Sitting on chairs and using. There's nothing wrong with sitting on chairs and eating on table. That's fine, but it should be done with good adab and good manners. So Masruq said, once I came to visit Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha, she ordered some food for me and said, I never have a fill of food and then want to cry except I start crying. Why? He asked her. She replied, I remember the state in which Messenger of Allah departed from this world. By Allah, he never had his fill of bread and meat twice on a single day. The reason why Sayyidina Aisha mentioned that she started crying because of she was feeling sad and because of she was remembering about Prophet ﷺ that used to make her sad. And the next thing is Sayyidina Aisha said Messenger of Allah ﷺ never had his fill of barley bread for 2 consecutive days until he passed away. These are some of the narrations which talks about the type of food or the way the food was consumed in the household of the Prophet ﷺ. So may Allah give us the tawfiq to learn more about the Prophet ﷺ and our children as well, and put the love of the Prophet ﷺ into our heart, into our children's heart, and about his and the love of his family within us and to our children as well. Assalamu alaikum everyone.